Hello, I am the Programming Dunce, and in this video I will introduce namespaces as well as a C Preprocessor. Namespaces act as like a collection of resources, a way of grouping functions and variables. Unlike objects though, they are completely abstract. You don't declare, create, or delete a namespace. Once you include a header file that consists of a namespace A, then you have access to that file's variables and functions. You just need to use a : or put using namespace a : at the top of your source file. For instance, you've seen std : before. However, we can put using namespace std and just type in cout to get the same effect. But first, you have to include that file. #include is actually a C Preprocessor directive that tells the compiler to look into a given file for resources. As stated before, quotation marks around the file indicates the file is in the same directory as the including file. Triangular brackets mean that the file to be included is located in a predefined location. Another useful set of directives is the define, ifdef, ifindef, and endif directives. For instance, null is really a macro equal to 0 caused by #define null 0 looking somewhere in the library. These directives can be used to ensure that header files, which can be included multiple times, are only processed once. While this hasn't been a problem in our personal project so far, if a header file declares an actual variable, then that is actually can lead to an error. It is an error to declare a variable twice. iostream, which acts like a header file, declares extern ostream cout and cin in some form. This is true in Visual Studio, Dev C++, and Linux's GCC. Yes, I checked. This is allowed because the preprocessor directives ensure that those variables, among others, are only declared once. In our own header file, we could pick a macro, usually based off of the header file's name. We can then set up the directives according to the image in the background. When the compiler reads the file for the first time, that macro is not defined. This renders ifindef to return true. That macro is then defined, and then the contents are processed. The endif is required by the C standard. When this file is read again by the compiler, the macro is now defined and ifindef returns false. The compiler will then skip to the endif directive, and if there is anything afterwards, it gets processed. I should also mention that these if-based processors have their own form of scope. There are no curly brackets involved, but they act like them. Ifdef, ifindef, and if begin a scope, and if you declare two of these, you'll need to declare two endif directives. The first endif addresses the most recent if-based directive. The last endif addresses the first if-based directive. There are other directives out there, but I feel that such a discussion would belong in a video discussing advanced C++ rather than intro. The next video will briefly discuss the keywords const and extern before discussing error management. Afterwards, we will have discussed the basic features of the core C++ programming language. Videos 11+ will focus on some library features, including files, strings, smart pointers, and possibly more. Thank you, as always, for watching.